All right, with two summer league games down, what are the big takeaways around Cam Thomas, Day'ron Sharpe, Kessler Edwards, and all the young talent for the Brooklyn Nets? And why does the potential for a Kevin Durant and Kyrie Irving trade loom large over how this team moves forward through the summer and into the regular season? We break all that down right after the theme music.
You are Locked On Nets, your daily Brooklyn Nets podcast. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Brooklyn, yo. Yes, my friends, it is the Locked On Nets podcast right here on the Locked On Podcast Network. It's your team, the Brooklyn Nets, even in the summertime, every single day. Over there, you're going to find Doug Norrie, owner-operator, DFSR, for all your daily fantasy sports rankings. DraftKings, FanDuel, he's got you covered. I'm Adam Marbrett, breaking down the New York Football Giants all summer long with my boy Andy Mack on the One Giant podcast. We thank you for making us your first listen of the day and let you know today's episode is brought to you by Bet Online. Bet Online has you covered with more props, odds, and lines than ever before. Bet Online, it's where the game starts and where we start. Doug, as always, is checking in on Monday. How are we, sir? Looking very clean and very sharp.
Shaved it up. Go over to YouTube, check that out. Shave the I'm giving up beard into the hey, we're gonna start trying it. We're gonna start trying again. Look,
He's back, boys. He's gonna give it another go.
I will say, because I'm excited to talk about this. It is a summer. I always forget every single year how summer league, just for like a week or so, just re-injects all the basketball vibes and energy back into my life. And I don't know if I remember this correctly from previous years, but these summer league games, not the Nets ones, the Nets ones been okay. Some of these games have been amazing. Like the Kings Magic game was better than like most sports playoff games. Like it was so good. It was double overtime. They were playing sudden death basketball. There's 25,000 people in that Thomas Mack Center. That's like an average baseball crowd is watching a summer league game. And it's because Paolo's playing and like there's a Paolo and who else? I forget the Kings, Keegan Murray. Like there's like real guys playing in these games. And I don't know. It's like fun. So I know we're going to talk about summer league, but it's like this one little, it's almost like a summer break, but it's the opposite because you get like summer basketball. The stakes feel super high. The energy is through the roof on some of these games. Mm-hmm. Players are playing the hearts out because a lot of these guys aren't going to make the NBA. And the other guys just want to ball out because all the NBA guys are there too. So we'll talk about that too. So anyway, that's my little quick diatribe on how awesome summer league is. And every year I forget, and every year like we can apply to go and locked on. I just couldn't go this year, and I'm like, oh my god, like why am I not there? This is so crazy.
And then you said all the young talent, right? Because and you're literally on the heels of the draft. So you just heard about all this hype about prospects, and then they go big, and then you go, oh, and we get a sample size of them before this layoff, and then we won't see them again until the regular season. And good teams may bury some of their rookies. Some of the teams like Sacramento, you go, oh, they said Keegan Murray. Well, we're going to see this kid, and you start to get that taste. Sudden death. They should carry that over to the regular season. I think overtime, one bucket, that's all it'll take, and it'll just be Seth Curry pulling up from half court and Steph Curry. Either one of the brothers can do it. Maybe for Brooklyn potentially, but you're right. We're going to get into the takeaways from these first two games. Nets played on Friday night against the Bucks. They played on Sunday against the 76ers. But the one thing just setting the table here around this too that I did think about with the excitement from Summer League is how everything that's going on with Kevin Durant and the potential trade. And we think the next domino in that would be Kyrie Irving and what's going to happen with him and the state of flux for the organization. Like it is interesting to think about because so many of the reports are, well, the Brooklyn Nets can wait and they can be patient and get the best deal possible. That's 100% true. And while this should not be something that overtakes the patience that the team has, if this bleeds through the summer, if this goes all the way into the regular season, you all of a sudden do impact how you want to develop and look at your young talent and the rotations you're going to put out there. And these guys getting a rhythm with one another, which in some ways for all the young talent makes the summer league that much more important because it's only the young guys there. So whatever rapport you're going to have, try to solidify that now because in a world where this does carry over, you don't know what the rotations are going to look like. And some of these names could be buried for the first month of the season.
Yeah, it does start to give a little bit of a window into like how the Nets might have to proceed going forward if there's going to be a youth movement. It's still the Kevin Durant thing still holds such a cloud over the rest of the season because we just don't know anything, right? And so we could play this out. There's 3 ways that this could play out. and each one is so different from each other. It's like Kevin Durant and Kyrie Irving just make amends and come back, right? There's the one where they trade them and it's just a totally new group of guys. And then we're just like, because they're going to bring in players. Or there's like this one other, and this kind of speaks more to Summer League. There's this one other scenario where they do, like we said before, where they have one season of tank in them because they have their own pick this year with the pick swap with Houston, who will probably stink. And so there's this chance that this year their pick is okay. So they have they could do like this 1 year youth movement thing, hope to just luck into like a top 5 pick, and then try to run it back with like some form of, guys that you're able to get in other spots. I think that's less realistic, but I will say, I mean, what I've seen in terms of Summer League so far doesn't make me feel great around like the youth stuff here. And that's where and I guess that kind of will lead into us talking about the games, but it does speak to me thinking even more, and which we kind of already knew, is that one, it'd be great to have Durant back and just wanting the ball out again. 2, they really have to get a lot of players back here, because this is like, if you watch these Summer League games, you can't feel amazing about like a youth movement in Brooklyn. And I guess we could kind of talk about that. But do you feel the same way, like on a high level?
Oh, of course, because now listen, TJ Warren, Royce O'Neal, these are not superstars,
Yes.
but that's going to impact how good this team can be with or without Kevin Durant and Kyrie Irving, obviously. But to your point as well, it's like, this is why you're hearing the reports that Sean Marks wants back a bona fide superstar in the making and another high-level fringe superstar guy, because it's not a knock on these other players. Remember, every move that they made over the last handful of seasons, in theory, was to build around Kevin Durant, Kyrie Irving, James Harden, now Ben Simmons, right? And all of a sudden, when you look at all these players, you go, oh, well, what are they now without those superstars? And what else would we need to bring in here in order to make sure that we can still maximize some of their value in the short and potentially long term? So yeah, high level.
And let me say one more, and one more thing about that is like, it speaks to the highlight probably of the Summer League so far with the Nets came not on the court, which is a quick video of Sean Marks, Masai Ujiri, and Rob Pelinka all kind of standing around courtside, kind of talking to each other. And then it's awesome because Woj is standing, Adrian Wojnarowski is standing right next to them with his cell phone out. And it's almost like they planned it. It's almost like they set it up. They're like, these 3 dudes talking, and then Woj just waiting to drop the Woj bomb on everybody, tweeting off to the side about it, and just it is fun. Yeah, exactly. It does speak to sort of what the NBA is about now too, right? Like Summer League is a spectacle, but it's not just a spectacle for what happens on the court. It's a spectacle for what sort of is happening off the court too. So as much as like I love watching the games too, those little moments are kind of awesome too, with Marks and these guys like maybe making deals. Probably not. They're not going to be making them out in the open, but like continuing this open dialogue where they're buddies, they're colleagues, and something could happen.
No, actually, I think I saw Sean Marks. He signaled over. He started taking guys off the court for the Brooklyn Nets. He said, now you're going to go. You're going to go with him. You're going with Pelinka now. And no. We'll sort it out later. Swap some jerseys here. Literally a mid-season trade, a mid-game trade in Summer League. But to your point, that's what's fascinating and why we've talked about this with the NFL, how they always dominate the news cycles. The NBA, they know how to maintain the news cycle throughout the offseason and still make themselves a topic of conversation well after the finals wrap up and a team has been crowned champion. No, there's still all of the excitement around this team that we'll obviously get into. Coming up here in a second, we're going to start to get into, obviously, Cam Thomas. And just to set the table, it was about what was he going to do? And we're 2 games in. We know we have another handful to go here, but was he going to be able to showcase the other side of his game, the playmaking away from the scoring aspect, to show that he can be someone that can be a leader on this team potentially? We know he can put up buckets. He did that. And then when you look in behind it, Alondes Williams obviously brought in after the draft. You have DDJ and what's going to happen with him, not technically under contract right now, waiting for some potentially dominoes to fall inside the organization, to say nothing of Day'ron Sharpe and of Kessler Edwards, right? We set the table around these guys of they need to check a lot of boxes for us in Summer League to fill us with confidence and maybe fill Doug with concern, as it's already happened over a couple of games, around what to expect going forward for them. So I want to break down all of that in a minute here from a both backcourt and front court standpoint, and then just talent evaluation and whether or not the Nets and Sean Marks have put enough into their baseline to feel comfortable with whatever they're going to get back in the trade for KD.
All right, before we talk about all that, going to talk to you about our friends over at Bet Online, your number one source for all your betting needs and sports info these days. I'm going to give you a crazy one here on Bet Online right now. And I frankly don't even know where this is coming from. So right now, and we love our friends at Bet Online, but this is where these kind of things you can maybe start to take advantage of also. Right now, at regular season MVP for 22-23, Luka Doncic on Bet Online, plus 425. Okay, I can live with it. Giannis, plus 600. I'm here for it. Kevin Durant, plus 900, ahead of Nikola Jokic, who was the runaway MVP winner last year, who's at plus 1,400, whose team is going to arguably be even better this year if they get Jamal Murray and Michael Porter back. So love our friends over at BetOnline. Take advantage of this one, folks. I'm maybe saying there might be a little bit of an error there. BetOnline is your continued source for all your sports wagering information. They got live betting, esports as well. You head on over to BetOnline. Use that mobile device. You learn about all the trends, all of the action. BetOnline, where the game starts.
All right, and where we start to dive in on the sample size from the Summer League action is with Cam Thomas. He's the big name for the Brooklyn Nets, obviously, one of the 2 first-round picks, the rookies they had on the roster last season. We said, what else can you do beyond the scoring? Can you show that you have the other facets of your game here? Now, the backcourt overall, I think, has some interesting storylines coming through these first 2 games. But from a Cam Thomas perspective, I think you mentioned it. I want to see him getting to the line because that's something that's tangible that translates to the NBA season. He's done a ton of that. What else have you liked from Cam Thomas over these first 2?
Yeah, I mean, a lot of it is just kind of stuff we already knew about him, that when he's firing on all cylinders, he's a bucket. He can score at the NBA level against NBA defenders. The Summer League is not that. But we do kind of know this around his game already. The usage rate has been absolutely through the roof through the first 2 games. I both like it and I don't like it. I'll say the part where I like it, and then we can talk about the part where I don't. The part where I can kind of let me say this. I can kind of understand it. I can understand it because when a guy like Cam Thomas looks around this rest of the Summer League team and he's like, these other guys just can't score the way I can. Right? Like Raekwon Gray, David Duke Jr., Kessler Edwards, Day'Ron Sharpe, the starters. None of those guys are known for like their on-ball scoring. You like the slashing, you like some of the three-point shooting. I'm not sure I love Raekwon Gray that much, but I can see Cam Thomas.
Yeah. That's just about over, friends.
Okay, there we go. So I can totally get it where he's like, hey, the first game I'm going to put up 23 from the field and get to the line 12 times. Second game, 17 shots from the field to the line 15 times. Awesome. Here for it. It makes sense. I can see why he looks around for it. So I guess in that way, I'll say it's a positive, but the same thing that's a positive to me is still kind of a negative, even though I will say I kind of get it from him, right? Because if I'm him and I'm looking around the rest of this team and I'm like, he's like, pass to do what? Like a mid-range shot for me is a much probably better outcome than a lot of these other guys shooting at all. So I'm kind of mixed. I mean, is that what do you think? Because that's where I kind of fell mixed on his performance. This is exactly what I didn't want to see, and in actually watching the games play out, I completely understand why it's happening.
Yeah, I tend to agree. He took 17 shots in this one, 5 of 17. He started out 1 of 7. And the one thing I'll say early on, it looked like, and this is where I think this is the difficulty of it, because he tried to, I think, hold off from going into pure scoring mode right out of the gate in this game. But as things move along and you're not necessarily seeing other guys knock down buckets, it becomes a little bit more difficult. And to your point, it's not the best sample size of who are the talent that's really going to be around him on a consistent basis during the season. That's going to reflect differently on the opportunities he tries to facilitate with, or what some of those players can do around him and how it affords his game to open up offensively even more. So that part of it I agree with. I do think he got to the line 15 times in this game. So you can, pick that up.
And he had 7 assists.
Right. And
7
I
assists
thought
also
were good. Exactly. Like, so he leaned into the areas of the game that I liked. And I agree. It's hard. If you are him, a human bucket, it's hard for you to hold back from that. So it's probably a difficult switch to be turning on and off in the Summer League. If I'm going to kind of just go even keel here, I'm going to continue to watch him over the course of the Summer League, obviously. The perimeter shooting isn't there right now for him either over these first couple of games. Now, again, players around you, screen setting, where's any other attention being paid from a defensive perspective? All that stuff is a factor, but that's one area that we talked about. I want to see the perimeter shot get better, and I want to see him being willing to try to set up his teammates. Right now, I'd say it's 60-40, doing it right, doing it wrong. And I think he can get better over these. But it's a fair point you make. How much can he lean into that, shy of saying, I'm going to take 12 shots today, and I'm just going to demonstrate to Steve Nash and the coaching staff, I keep setting dudes up. They're missing, but I keep going to them, right? And I can go ahead and go towards the basket and get to the line as often as I'd like.
Yeah, and I will. So if we think about Cam Thomas this summer league versus last summer league, right? If we think back on last year's summer league performance by him, which I think we all remember pretty well because it was really awesome, right? Like he was basically just doing this in last year's summer league. Last year, it was like this, hey, we found something, first round pick, dropped in the draft. This guy can really score, like he can score on the NBA level. This is going to translate. It's all great. Then we saw how it translated to the NBA, which was pretty inefficient, could not shoot from three, 27% on 2.6 attempts, kind of ended up playing like a lot more minutes this year than I thought. It was lumpy with the minutes because COVID had him playing a lot of minutes, but he averaged like 18 minutes a game this year, which would have been definitely more than I would have guessed had I just been thinking randomly about it. So he actually got like a decent NBA sample size last year, and it was incredibly inefficient. So now when we see him come to Summer League this year, he's doing all the same exact things pretty much that we saw last year, but the context has now changed. The context around him is different now. This is year 2. We already saw it. It was the first time around was fun. We all had a great time. Summer League MVP. It was great. This year is actually no different, really, than what he was doing last year, but you can tell the tone is different because it's like, right, we got it. And we have also seen that what he's doing now translates some to the NBA and not tons, right? So like, I don't know why we would go huge rah-rah around this. It's good to like maybe not have seen a regression, but I don't know how we project it to look any different this year based on this Summer League performance. Based on this Summer League performance, I'd basically have to project the same season he had last season with like some moderate growth, but nothing more than that. So like that, I guess that's kind of what I mean. Is like, we saw 2 summer leagues. It's been pretty much the same, but like, I guarantee I feel different about it this time around.
Oh, of course. Yeah. Well, and again, like I said, expectations are being raised here. And again, 2 games in, plenty to go. But I think maybe we're going to end up saying, right, what does it look like when you get to the regular season? And how does he look in the context of whatever this team is? And where's the growth over the course of the year if he starts to get consistent and expected minutes as opposed to last year where there was some up and downs there? The other guy, I think, and this can certainly bleed over here. I want to stay in the backcourt, and then we'll get into Day'ron Sharpe and Kessler Edwards as well. But to me, David Duke Jr., a guy that we understand what his limitations are. He's not the most athletic guy in the world. However, this is a guy that, I said it over on Twitter, clearly a dude that has seen some NBA action, right? Because he came in and maybe in the same bag as Cam Thomas. He clearly has come into Summer League with a very clear mindset of what I am here to display the capability of doing. And, when I was note-taking over the course of this game, I said he's a guy you want on your bench, doesn't have the breakdown, blow by when he's on ball in terms of defenses, but gives consistent rep by rep ability that you can rely on and depend on. So I thought that was something that when we look at him, I feel like we're talking about a player that if Kevin Durant and Kyrie Irving are gone and this is a new rotation of things, he can have a role on this team immediately going forward in this season. And then maybe even if somehow the stars do stay, he's still a bench guy that has real value. I think that he's shown the growth from year 1 to year 2 that you want to see if you're looking for guys to expand their role for this team going forward.
Yeah, he's always going to be a funny one. And guys like this are funny because they're sort of tweeners, right? He's like not exactly a point guard, but he's not exactly a wing. He's more like a 2 guard, except that like he's not a great 3-point shooter. Although that's, he's shot decent in the first game, but overall he's like a 25% shooter from 3 last year. So like the athleticism at times will always come shining through in big ways in the right kind of game. But then when you get to like real NBA action, sometimes you start to like wonder what exactly it is, right? Like, is he going to be like a Bruce Brown like cutter? Well, he's not really big enough, right? Like he's not like big enough to guard the guys Bruce Brown was guarding, right? Like, and so he's another one that I love the energy. I definitely get like why he feels super confident in these summer league games. He's like, hey, looking around, be like, I played in the NBA last year. Was it tons?
Better than most of you.
Like, yeah, exactly. Like when you're doing the little hierarchy, and these guys should definitely do this, He's like, I was 22 games worth of NBA action, 15 and a half minutes in those games. In COVID stuff, he was like played major minutes and had some crazy lines a couple games. Like I don't remember exactly what game it was. I remember texting David Duke Jr.'s a net for life. I remember texting that piece around one of his performances.
Right.
And so I like it all. I guess it's like sort of not exactly with the Cam thing, but I just worry about this is, again, I think an example of where Summer League can cloud our judgment around what the player is, because he actually has some stuff that like he can't really fix. Like he's always going to be a little too small, right? Like the shooting might just not get there. And if those two things are going to be the case, then this might be the destiny kind of. And with that said, you're like, oh, 28 shots in Summer League with decent efficiency from the field. And I can kind of dream on some of these things too.
Yeah, and that's why you like seeing him on the ball here a little bit. I think that's something they want to try, right? Hey, can you be the guy who's on ball in that backcourt as opposed to playing purely the 2 guard? And if we can continue to expand your role with a clear ceiling to it, then you have something we can take going forward. Obviously, the other players then to talk about specifically in the backcourt are going to be Alondes Williams. He got a little bit of run in this one as well. And then we'll turn our attention over to other familiar faces that the fan base is curious about in Day'ron Sharpe and Kessler Edwards and what we've seen so far from them.
All right, going to talk about all that in a second. First, got to let you know this episode's brought to you by Rock Auto. Ever increasing numbers of makes and models of cars out there. All the parts, my goodness. Try counting all those parts. You can't. You'll be there all day. Thousands, millions maybe. I'm not sure. I'm not a car expert. I don't need to be. That's because I have Rock Auto. It's for those do-it-yourselfers out there that want to, hey, just go watch some videos. You can fix a lot of things in your car by just kind of figuring it out online. That's where Rock Auto comes. They're going to tell you the exact part that you need for the make and model of your car. So Rock Auto is a family business serving do-it-yourselfers for over 20 years. Prices are reliably low for every customer as well. All you got to do is go to rockauto.com right now. You see all the parts available for your car or truck. You write locked on in the how did you hear about us box so they know that we sent you. Amazing selection, reliably low prices, all the parts your car will ever need. rockauto.com.
And speaking of reliable, we do have questions about Day'ron Sharpe and Kessler Edwards and their reliability. I put Day'ron Sharpe's first there on YouTube in terms of the hierarchy. I'm actually going to flip over to Kessler Edwards because I think there's just something a little bit more interesting here. A lot of fans were kind of talking, especially over the second game on Sunday, of, well, I'm not loving what I'm seeing from Kessler Edwards. Now he knocked down some triples towards the back end of the fourth quarter, which is exactly what you expect from him. But the thought that came to mind was, this is the exact kind of player that isn't really going to show you anything in the summer league, because we know, well, he's not the quickest. He showed you that he's not great on the ball, fumbled around trying to get some guys off the dribble a little bit in this one, but he's a guy that is so built in my mind for a team that has clear superstars or has clear knockdown shooters, guys that are going to do a lot of the work, and you're waiting for that action in the corner. You're the 3-and-D wing. And it doesn't mean that he's limited to that or that I'm going to all of a sudden start to downgrade my expectations for him. But summer league, I think with the clunkiness of the play, right? It's very up and down. There's turnovers. The defensive side of things is not always going to be that crisp. Kessler Edwards is a guy that I think is going to kind of get caught just running up and down the court for big stretches of time because there isn't that consistency on a play-to-play basis where he gets to be the benefactor, getting the ball in his spots, getting some three-point looks, obviously. And he showed it. Threw down a monster one, right? Elevated and glided a little bit for you. But I think you can't really take a lot of the sample size off of him in summer league the way you can on some other players. Does that feel, I mean, is that fair to you as far as how you evaluate Kessler?
Yeah. So with Kessler, it's funny. I have the same view of Kessler that I kind of have her on Cam and DDJ here, in that my opinion isn't changed, even though it hasn't looked great. Right. Mm-hmm. And I was like the re-signing of Kessler. I want him on the team. I still think they found something that he has not shown in summer league is of really no concern to me, because like you said, this is just not the showcase for him. Right. Like this is just not a place where a 3-and-D wing who isn't going to be on ball a lot is really going to come out and shine. Defense is like sort of secondary in these games. Although the Nets for their part have been trying, and like the effort is there. But for the most part, this is just not going to be a summer league. Like summer league is not going to be a great showcase for him. So my opinion around him is unchanged too. And I'll put it together with Day'ron Sharpe also. Like, again, we have to remember that guys like Edwards and guys like Day'ron Sharpe are always going to benefit. Like, they're never going to be the best players on the team. That's not a hot take. But they will benefit from other skilled position guys on their team that can get them into good spots, that can get them the right shots, that can like do the things that they do well. And as we just talked about with Cam Thomas and David Duke Jr., this team is like not chocked full of those guys. This team really doesn't have any of those guys on the squad that can get them like into really good spots. And that's really not what they're trying to do in Summer League anyway. So in the same way, like I said, my opinion around Cam and DDJ is not changed. Lack of productivity from Kessler. And there's been some sloppiness on the part of Sharpe. I'm kind of unmoved by those too. Like my future outlook after 2 games does not change about them, because what was the expectation? We said this about these guys ahead of time. We're like, this was the expectation. We knew this was going to happen. If you had done something crazy and was like putting the ball on the deck and blowing by guys, I would be like, whoa. But short of that, my opinion's not changed, and not for the negative either.
Yeah, and I think you mentioned Day'ron Sharpe there before. We want to wrap up just on a closeout thought here around some of the minutes that we're seeing from these players in Summer League. But with Day'ron, there's going to be this element of, so there's some things that he's doing really well, like walling guys off underneath the basket. And again, competition level is a factor there. Hits a little baseline jumper. You're excited about that because you want to see him start to expand some of that game. I thought his passing had looked pretty good in this one, just picking a couple of spots, a couple of no-look feeds, finding guys in the corner. So those areas, like I actually think that Day'ron is taking those little incremental steps forward, especially for a guy that we talk about this group of Cam and Kessler and Day'ron. Day'ron's the guy that saw the least amount of action last year. So he needs to continue to improve his game. And one area that we saw some struggles in this one, and we'll probably see over the summer, was setting those pick and rolls up and coming out to set those screens. But I remember the one sample size where he goes to set the screen and he gets called for the offensive foul, but Cam's on ball. Cam Thomas is on ball there, and he just starts the action too quick, right? So there's also communication elements to this where you're picking apart an area of any player's game, but you have to kind of go back and revisit it and say, was that predicated on the play design? It was his timing off there, or was the timing of the ball handler off, right? Was the things that were going on around him off as well? Nothing changes for me. I don't start all of a sudden raising the ceiling for Day'ron, but I certainly look at him and say, I think here's a guy that didn't get the action last year and now can incrementally show me over the course of Summer League, what can you carry over into the regular season? So we'll keep watching him. We can save Alondes Williams for tomorrow. I think he kind of checked the usual boxes we expected from him coming out. The one thing that you brought up when we were kicking this off, and we can close out here, Doug, was when we look at the minutes for players on this team here coming out of Summer League, right? When Kessler and 24 minutes from here, although Raquan Gray did play 27 in this one, somewhat shockingly, 28 for Day'ron, David Duke Jr., 26, 30 for Cam Thomas. What are we knowing about guys that are getting 13, 12, and under 10 minutes here over these first couple of games?
That they're not going to be on the team. That maybe it's going to be a little Long Island Nets situation, and that's going to be it. So I think you can just basically take no minutes to mean we've seen all that we need to see. And that's where these guys, we have some guys that have a chance to make it, and we have some guys that don't. And I think that's pretty much tells the story.
Yeah, and I thought the one guy that I'm just going to mention here as we get out the door, obviously we'll come back in, keep covering Summer League. I'm going to keep Noah Kirkwood in my mind. He's not playing big minutes, but when he's on the court, he does look like a guy that understands what his role is supposed to be and how to be effective defensively, offensive end as well. He's hit a couple of really nice shots when he's had the opportunities. Don't know if that translates to him being at the NBA level at any point, but at least unlike Raquan Gray, I look at Kirkwood and say, continue to develop in the G League, my friend. You can certainly be a talent. Some guys here are just kind of checking the box for you're not going to ever sniff that NBA level.
All right, we're going to get out of here. Check out YouTube. Make sure you subscribe to YouTube. Make sure you subscribe wherever you listen to podcasts, free and available on both. That's how you help the podcast, keeping it coming free every single day here in the off season, Summer League and beyond. So go make sure you subscribe to the podcast.
Yeah, your grandfather once told me it was okay to think about what you want to do until it was time to start doing what you were meant to do. Why, that's Brian Cox from The Rookie. Take that or whatever it's worth.
Oh, what are the all-time great poets? I guess so. We'll be back again tomorrow talking more Brooklyn Nets basketball.